afternoon. We hope you've had your couple dialogue last week. Did you? And had a chance to discuss your God-given responsibility in raising your children and setting them towards a heavenly goal. If you remember, that was the topic of the talk last week, right? Okay. Today, let me start with a question. Look at me. All right, good. Okay. Sort of a review. Okay. Is it okay, is a question, if, let's say, a father provides well for the material needs of his family, and is a good husband and a good parent as well, but then, even if he claims to be a Christian parent, this father doesn't lift a finger to personally teach his children about Jesus Christ, about God and His heavenly kingdom? Is it okay? Okay. Would you agree with me that there's something fundamentally wrong with that picture? A father who is a good parent, who's a good husband, who provides well for his children, but doesn't lift a finger to teach his children about Jesus Christ. Maybe you will say, well, isn't that why we send our children to school for? Okay. Well, yes, as we said in the first talk last week, we said there are very good delegated authorities in this area, and certainly we don't intend, thank God, to replace what the schools do for our children. But as parents, we are held accountable and we are held responsible in making things happen, and let's not just depend on the school. Okay. Last week, we introduced you to Deuteronomy 6 verse 7, which says, "You," referring to parents, "you shall teach His commandment diligently to your children." You shall teach this commandment diligently to your children. And we said that God expects and intends all parents to make it their duty to teach their children to love God with all their heart, with all their strength, and with all their soul. Okay? God holds no one else accountable for teaching our children except us, the parents. The verse, Deuteronomy 6 verse 7, further instructs us how to do it. It says, "And you shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise." In other words, you wouldn't set up a little classroom in your house and schedule teachings for your children and give them talks like this. No, that's not the way you do it. You would, as implied in this verse, use any and every occasion of your life to teach your children about God. Last week, we learned that that's exactly what God expects of all parents. That's exactly what God expects of all parents. God intends us parents to make it our highest priority, namely to pass on our faith, to pass on our belief in Jesus Christ, to make sure that our children learn it and that they should observe it. Not just by our words, but also by our actions. And we ought to do so, as the Bible says, diligently. In other words, consciously, purposefully, and untiringly. The challenge of today is not only that there are many kinds of influences that would negate our good effort in raising our children in a Christian way, but also because in the process of teaching, we compete with the need of our children to learn so many things nowadays, just in order for them to make it through school and to make it through life in this very complicated world. So much knowledge is abundant, yet so much knowledge is necessary. So much so that the knowledge of God is crowded out and condensed into a religion class, something to get a good grade at, just like a math or a history subject. Yet, as genuine Christians, Our faith is our life. It's not just a knowledge thing. And everything we consider and value as important is anchored on our belief and our understanding and our relationship with Jesus Christ. And if you examine your own walk in faith, you didn't chance upon this except if someone hadn't drawn you near to Jesus. And someone hadn't encouraged you to make important decisions, to know Him, to love Him, to serve Him. Now, in the case of your children, that someone is you, parents. If you're too busy to do this thing which God intended for you to do, then you're simply too busy doing things that God didn't intend for you to do. I know I'm really repeating what we talked about last week, but much of what we will talk about today is premised on this first desire of yours, and I hope you have this desire now, to take this godly mission of yours seriously. Unless you desire to take on this responsibility, unless you believe that truly you're accountable for your child's knowledge and awareness and love for the gospel and your child's yearning for a heavenly goal, then unless you have that desire, then what we will teach you this afternoon is just nice to know information and will not make a difference in your family life. Okay? But if you desire this, if you desire to take on this responsibility, then we will teach you this afternoon a strategy to turn your home into one of the best places where your children can learn and live the Gospels. It's simple, it's doable, it's workable. Are you ready to learn? Okay, good. Let's begin. Studies have shown 3 common factors found in strong, healthy families. First of all, the parents in a strong, healthy family have a strong commitment to the concept of family. A strong commitment to the concept of family. They understand the vision and the purpose of a family, and they order their lives around their roles in the family. In other words, they take parenthood seriously. And they desire to have strong families. I want a strong family. Okay? They know this doesn't happen just like that, and that they need to make things happen. Okay? That's the first thing. The second, because of that, they spend time together as a family, and they think of ways to spend this time together profitably. And you will hear the word together so many times this afternoon that you will equate family with together. Okay? They are both physically and emotionally accessible to one another in the family. And these parents of successful, strong, healthy families create what many people call a tight-knit family. Third, and this is interesting that even secular studies have pointed this out. It says most strong families have an identifiable spiritual involvement that binds them together and provides support. They have an identifiable spiritual involvement. In other words, they can see it. People can see that they belong to some spiritual group. Okay? One can see where they belong, and it is clear whom they believe, and that they support one another in that family in their spiritual beliefs and journey. Okay. It's interesting that these studies show that strong families are united in their faith. It tells us that these families are strong because they are united in faith. But it also tells us that they are united in faith because they're strong families. In the first 2 senses, namely, they spend time together and they do things together. Okay? And so that's the essence of our talk this afternoon. That's the strategy that we will teach you. Namely, that in order to turn your home into a quote-unquote classroom that supports learning and growth in your common belief in Jesus Christ as a family, then all you have to do is simply organize your family life and activities around common activities and share a common life together as a family. I will call it, for this purpose, I will call it a purposely planned family life. A purposely planned family life. This purposely planned family life is the best setting that will make it conducive for you to teach your children to be open to the good news, and they will see how it is applied in your life and in their young age and in their life, and to listen to you with interest and trust when you speak to them while you sit, while you stand, while you're walking, and while you're reclining. To do this, you need to establish certain practices and activities that you can do together as a family. If you keep doing these activities often enough together, it can become a pattern and then a tradition in your family. These things can either happen naturally and spontaneously, or it can be gently enforced by the parents as a rule for everyone to follow. You with me so far? Okay. I would like to call on my wife Daisy now to share some patterns and traditions that help to build Christian family life. If you haven't done these things yet in your families, or if you haven't made it a pattern or a tradition, we suggest that you begin working on them as soon as possible. Daisy?
Good afternoon, brothers and sisters. Let me begin with family meals. Did you know that 1/3 of U.S. families no longer eat dinner together? 2/3 of those who do watch television during dinner. This is sad, considering that family meals provide an opportunity for face-to-face communication and for building relationships. And for many modern families, family meals are almost the only regular time we can really swap stories about their comings and goings, their discoveries, and their challenges. It's a time when they can keep everyone updated and when they can encourage or teach one another. But if they have to compete with a television set, then a golden opportunity is lost. So, our instruction to you as Christian parents is: gather your children together for dinner and turn off the TV set while you're having your meal. This is perfect quality time. Don't waste it. And don't limit yourself to weeknight dinners. Depending on the age of your children and on the complexity of your life out of school and work, we also encourage setting aside family meal times for Saturday nights and meals on Sunday. Again, this would differ from family to family and on the kinds of activities the individuals in your family like to do or are committed to do on weekends. But whether weeknight or weekend, we highly encourage Christian parents to set aside family meal times as a time for bonding. No TV. Unless you're running a boarding house, then get everyone to come to the table at the same time and break bread together as a family. Parents, as we always repeat, you're in charge. I'm happy to report that ever since Eddie and I got married, we never had a television in our dining room. And though our dining room is right next to the living room, where there is a TV set, we would turn off the TV before we sit down at the dining table. Mealtime is always together time for us. And when the meal is ready, no one starts the meal until everyone is on the dining table. And we start with a Thanksgiving prayer before our meal. Of course, with 4 kids and busy mom and papa, it's hard to assemble everyone. But we wait. Sometimes, everyone at the table shouts in chorus to call the remaining person to dinner. But that's just to emphasize the point that we consider meal times as family time. Whether there's only a parent and a child, or two children alone without parents, when it's meal time, we join each other for the meal. Certainly, when Eddie comes home late from work and has dinner, I would sit with him while he's having dinner. And if the kids are there as well, every so often, we would invite them to just sit with us and talk. Indeed, mealtime is a perfect opportunity for our family to ask about each other, to share stories, to reminisce. My kids love reminiscing, especially humorous events we experienced when they were little children. And every time he has a chance, Eddie would engage them in light conversation about our faith. And sometimes, even heavy conversation about a talk or a retreat he's about to deliver. Our family will certainly not be the same without these shared moments at the dining table. The second one is family prayer. This is one of the elements of membership in our community. Just as it is our responsibility to pray individually, it is also our responsibility to pray as a family. This should include some family Bible time, at least reading the Bible during prayer time, although hopefully some explanation of the passage and at times discussion. Because we're able to gather our small children together during meals, these became a perfect time to institutionalize a simple Thanksgiving prayer. We'd basically thank God for the events that happened to all of us during the day. Eddie and I would start it with simple but specific Thanksgiving prayers to God. Children don't appreciate vague general prayers, we learned. The more specific they are, the more they can relate to it. For example, here's what our children would say. Thank you for letting me pass my test in math. Or thank you for not letting me fight with my friend who took my ball pen. The prayers are short, maybe 1 or 2 liners, but as parents, we get a glimpse of their activities. Then, if we want to talk more about it, we do it during meals. You may have to experiment to find the right time, content, and approach for your family prayer at various stages of life. While they were young and our schedules still synchronized, Eddie would gather us around the living room just before they all left for school and Eddie for work. We would intercede for special concerns, again, keeping our prayers simple and specific. And then each child would receive a blessing from Eddie and from myself. But as their school schedules started getting mixed up when they grew older, we would continue family prayer time, but in a quieter setting for a few moments after church service. We go to a Catholic Mass on Sundays. Still, whenever there were special concerns, like at the start of a long road trip, an illness in the family, a forthcoming exam, or a challenging business meeting for Eddie, we would always gather and huddle as a family to pray. The third one is special events. Special events can be a way of reinforcing certain truths or practices and also of creating interest in family life. I would classify these as church-related events, school-related events, personal events, and family events. Church-related events are days like Christmas, Holy Week, and Easter, for instance. In our family calendar, we also include the community events of the Lagayan ng Panginoon. We capitalize on these events to bring out their significance. Again, we discuss these matters during mealtime. Christmas is a time to establish your own family tradition about gift giving, about almsgiving even, about expressing our thanksgiving. I'm one of the corny moms who insists on placing Christmas stockings by the doors of our children. even now when they're grown up, and stuff them with little odds and ends. While it is predictable, the kids continue to be surprised that mom never tires of doing it. As for Holy Week and Easter, we've changed our ways ever since we joined community. It used to be that our family would take advantage of the long Easter holidays and go on vacation. But since we've joined community, we join in the Easter Triduum. Our friends would often ask us what we plan to do during Holy Week, and Eddie would say always, "No vacation plans, but we plan to keep it holy." School-related events would be special moments for our kids, whether it is a performance for their cheer dancing competition, or for someone's tennis or swim match, or piano recital. It would be a family affair. Eddie and I would gather all our children and support whoever it is that is performing or on stage. We do it often enough that it really feels disloyal if one of us fails to attend. Consequently, no one misses out. Personal events that are special to a child, again, also becomes a family event for us. Certainly, birthdays are always celebrated by us as a family together. If the kids like to have friends for their birthday, they are certainly welcome. And my children are proud to bring in their friends and proud to introduce their family to their friends. A tradition for us is that we would hear Mass during someone's birthday. And at the end of the Mass, we would stay behind and gather together and lay hands over the celebrant. And then each person would say a special Thanksgiving prayer and birthday intercession for the celebrant. And when we would have private birthday meals together, we would then take the time to each honor the celebrant by saying specific things that they like or admire about the celebrant, starting from the youngest to the oldest, which is me and Eddie. Vacations are also special events that can be family events. Of course, time and resources could define exactly what kind of vacation your family may have. But even a simple picnic or a visit to the museum or zoo together as a family is a wonderful opportunity to build and strengthen family life. As the children grow older and have their own schedules, of course, vacation schedules become more difficult to synchronize. Planning way ahead of time helps everyone to block off these times. The fourth one is serving as a family. Building a strong family has a potential disadvantage. It can create a self-centered family rather than a generous family. We don't want that. As we said in the first talk, it is important that we teach our children to go beyond themselves and to reach out to others. We can do that and should do that also as a family and make it part of our family life. One of the best antidotes against being a self-centered family is to have the family be service-oriented together and to teach our children to become givers, not takers. In our case, we like hosting and entertaining guests at home. 1 Peter 4 verse 9 says, "Practice hospitality ungrudgingly to one another." Our home is open to brothers and sisters within and from other communities. Once in a while, brothers and sisters in affiliate communities who come to Manila for an event would need a place to stay in and to be able to experience and sample family life in our community or in Manila. Eddie and I volunteer willingly, and our daughters are only so happy to bunk with us, vacate the room, and offer it to the guests. And when we do have guests, whether we have our men's group or special guests, our daughters would take it upon themselves to help service the guests during dinner time. I thank God that our children share in our joy of serving others in this way. And when their friends come over, I make it a point to fuss over them and their preparations for meals and in cleaning up and getting the house ready. And since we entertain and serve their friends when in this way, our children reciprocate willingly. Our guests also become their guests. You know, we never intended to show off this way, but I think that when our children's friends are able to experience our kind of family service and family life, it becomes some kind of an evangelistic opportunity for us in a subtle and unobtrusive way. We've always believed that if we open our family life to others, it will become easier for us to share what God has done to us and what Jesus is to us.
So Daisy has described for you 4 ways, and I have additional things to share with you. She said family meal time. Okay. She said family prayer time, special events, and serving together as a family. The 5th item we'd like to propose is Lord's Day and Family Night. One of our obligations as Christians is to set aside one day of the week to honor the Lord. The scriptural and traditional pattern of observing the commandment is to set aside Sunday, the day of the Lord's resurrection. However, the sword of the Spirit's approach to the Lord's Day helps us observe the day even better. We start the Lord's Day on Saturday night after sunset with Lord's Day opening prayers and a meal, following the scriptural pattern of beginning a new day at sunset. Occasionally, special events or church events take priority, but we normally ought to have family night on Saturday. Usually it's done per family, but on occasion you may want to do this together with community friends or extended family members or other guests. And as Daisy mentioned earlier, by having guests around the house, it exposes our children to the benefits of leisurely relating or relaxed formality, good manners, and self-created entertainment. After the Lord's Day opening prayers and meals, this is usually extended to sharing family time together with either extended prayers or special family activities. Now, there's more to the Lord's Day than the opening celebration, of course. Our family time is meant to get us ready for the rest of the Lord's Day, not to replace it. It should prepare us for church services and community gatherings if those are part of the Lord's Day for us. And speaking of church services, Daisy and I go to Mass on Sundays. And again, in this togetherness thing, we always make it a point that all of us go to Mass together. No matter what our schedules were on Saturday night or on Sunday, we go to Mass together. You know, there's a tendency, especially for us Roman Catholics, because there's Mass almost every hour in our parish, then we just go whenever we feel like it and, leave the rest behind in our house. And I think I would recommend this in your families. Go together. Number 6, other family traditions. We also recommend that you develop your own special family traditions. These are ways of strengthening the family bond. They may not be necessary, but they are real helps. Like social traditions, they begin not as traditions. You don't say, today we're going to start a tradition. Okay? You started with an activity that is done once, you enjoy it, you recall it, then you repeat it and enjoy it again. After a while, people in your family expect it and they look forward to it. Then you have the right to call it a tradition. Now, in our family, I've not purposely created traditions there, but over the years, it has become standard practice, SOP. And so I guess you can call them traditions. For instance, it is Daisy's and my practice that we greet the friends of our children when they arrive. Okay? And when they leave, we go and send them off at the door. Okay? In fact, if I'm busy on my computer or even resting in bed, and my children's friends are about to leave, they will knock on our room and say, "Papa, my friends are going." And then I said, "Okay, goodbye." And then said, "Papa, my friends are going." I said, and I go to the door and say goodbye to the friends. Okay. It's our tradition that when one of our children attend a retreat, sponsored either by school or by the community, all members of the family will write a short letter to the child in which they would then read during their quiet time during the retreat. They look forward to that. Even our meals have become a tradition at home. You can go to our house on Sunday morning, each and every Sunday for 52 Sundays a year, and it will be the same breakfast every Sunday morning. Okay? I know some families have a tradition, for example, that at the end of a year, they would write a family newsletter or a journal which they then broadcast to their friends and family members. Other families go out of town once a year and have a day of prayer to start the year. Then other families, of course, visit grandparents on a regular basis. This becomes tradition, especially when coincided with a special event, a death anniversary, for example, or certainly a birthday. Vacations can be a tradition to some families as well during the designated time of the year, say on a national holiday or a weekend in summer can become a very good family tradition. Now, even just a picnic to your favorite place done on a particular day of the year or the month can become a tradition of some sort. Certainly, time and resources are a factor, but even a simple getaway somewhere together as a family can be a moment rich with memories and quality time together. I know one family who makes it a point that when they're on a special vacation, they would all have their photos taken wearing the same outfit, like the Von Trapp family or the Osmonds, if you remember those movies. Okay. Finally, many families develop interests in things that they can all do together, whether it's music, whether it's craft, whether it's sports, working on puzzles, anything. Those are all possible examples. The essential word here is together. Okay. Number 7. Of course, I will not be able to get away with this talk without saying anything about community participation. Okay, I talked about this already during the last talk, but it's helpful to mention it again in this context. Part of the pattern of the life of the family should be involvement in community life, in meetings, in service, and activities. You parents, need to make these a priority and see that the weekly schedule and yearly calendar for your family makes room for this. We'd like to point out that when it comes to community activities, parents should not put family activities before community activities. Get it? Okay. When it comes to community activities, parents should not put family activities before community activities. Let me explain. Of course, there are exceptions in those family activities involving schedules beyond the parents' control. For example, school events. Certainly, if your child has a graduation on a day when we have a community event, guess where you should go? The whole family goes to the graduation. Parents should make room in their calendar for community activities, primarily because having joined and committed ourselves to a community, it behooves us to fulfill this commitment to the community. If parents are slack in their commitments to a community, then they're teaching their children the wrong notion of community commitment and involvement. Okay? All right. Number 8, special circumstances. Well, because of extraordinary circumstances, some of the families may not have a normal schedule like we do. Okay? But with creativity and diligence, you can still build a strong Christian family life. If you find yourselves in some special circumstance that seems to provide an obstacle to building the kind of family life that we've been talking about, then you should please discuss this with your men's and women's group and discuss this with your pastoral leader. Okay, one final note before we leave this topic. I do know that not all parents are fortunate enough to start afresh, listen to a seminar like this, and be able to raise and, develop good practices while their children are young. Some of you, and some of you in the audience there, may have grown children already and may not have had the benefit of knowing this material, and therefore are going to have to start, catching up on a moving train, going the wrong direction. Okay? Your children may already have partly grown already, and you have to undo or create new practices that may seem strange and inconvenient to them. You don't go home and say, well, we just came from a parenting course and, tomorrow we got to do this. All right? Your children may have already gotten used to their ways. Okay? They may have sought friendships outside of the family and have not had a chance to strengthen their ties with you. Now listen, there is room for grace. There is room for grace. There is room for hope. My advice is simple. Don't aim for rapid change, but go for small victories. Don't insist on imposing all of these 8 guidelines item by item. Do it one meal at a time, one game together, one celebration. Okay? Make yourself available. If they will not be able to share their stories of their life, then tell them stories about your life. Okay? Ask them opinions about your life rather than offer opinions about their life. Okay? Begin to build connections. Join them in their activities, either physically, psychologically, or emotionally. If they disagree with your opinions and your views, listen and try to understand them. Don't immediately pounce on them and give them correction. Don't just say, well, according to Ligaya. Wow, they'll not like Ligaya. No. Stay on their side rather than opposed. Build trust. And there's a saying, one of my favorite sayings, people do not care what you know until they know that you care. Okay? And in the case where you've built your grown children already and they've gone on their own and you've not really been a good parent, you can't just automatically say, okay, we got to do this. People do not care what you know until they know that you care. So build on the caring part first. And by all means, you should discuss your approach with your men's and women's group and your pastoral leader. Let me conclude. It may sound presumptuous to most of you, but it seems to me that the term close-knit family is a redundant term. It's a redundant term. Personally, I think all families should be close-knit. Personally, I think all families should be close-knit. But I realize it takes time and purposeful effort. Time and purposeful effort. It will not happen. And in my opinion and my observation, families become close-knit precisely because of the patterns and traditions that the parents have purposefully established, and the activities and the quality conversations that go on during those moments. Okay. The point of this talk for you, parents, is to create opportunities to increase the amount of interpersonal interaction between you and your children, between your children and each other. Okay. It requires effort, I know. It requires planning, even. But most of all, it requires a sense of purpose. A sense of purpose. Remember, family patterns and traditions are a perfect setting for you to use to model and to teach good Christian values and traditions, to teach the faith, to teach your children to have a personal relationship with God, and to reach out for their heavenly goals. It's a perfect setting for that. Okay? If your children do not see you concerned in building tradition, okay, if they see that you don't care about tradition and practices and you're going on your own, if they don't see that you're taking the lead in making things happen to the family, they will not put much value to the family. And they will strike out on their own. They will seek family ties somewhere else. And then it will be harder for you to build their trust and to teach them exactly what God expects you to teach them. Okay? But if you are proactive, if you are purposeful in building a strong family life, then I can almost be sure you will gain the trust of your children. And it will be much, much easier and natural for you to discuss godly matters in the day-to-day course of your life together as a closely knit family. Okay. Earlier, I talked about turning your home into one of the best places where your children can learn and live the Gospels. So, now that you've learned that the way to do that is to create a strong family life based on practices and tradition, you're all set. You're all set, aren't you? Okay. Good. Next week, we'll talk more concretely about what you should work on and teach your children. God bless you and your family.